10 to 7 on breakfast. So as we know, both Labor and National need Winston Peters to form a government, but what sort of impact could some of Winston's bottom lines have on the property market? First, let's have a look at the market at the moment. Nationally, median sale prices have remained at $480,000 over the past year, even though sales volumes nationwide have dropped around 29%. We want to have a look at some of the regions in New Zealand, though. Median sale prices are still pretty high in Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland at $836,000. This is despite prices increasing there by just 1.3% in the past year. There's been about a 5% increase in sale prices in Kirikiriroa, Hamilton and Tauranga. Ōtepoti, Dunedin's house prices actually increased the most by almost 8%, but you can still buy property for a reasonable price there, on average, $345,000. So after negotiations with Winston Peters, how are things likely to change in New Zealand? Property Institute of New Zealand's Chief Executive Ashley Church is with us this morning. Tēnā koe, Ashley.
Good morning.
Are we talking a potential crackdown on foreign buyers?
Look, I think that's one of the potential outcomes. There's a number of things. I think it's important firstly to understand who Winston Peters is, and he's essentially Trump-light. He's New Zealand's version of Donald Trump in the sense, just to be fair, in the sense that he's very much about economic nationalism. So the sorts of things that are likely to happen to the property market are going to be things that appeal to that idea of going back 40 or 50 years, and that appeals, that comforts his support base. So in respect of what we can expect going forward, they've got some pretty clear policies outlined in their manifesto, and we can predict with some certainty, I think, what's likely to happen because both National and Labor have some similarities with them in respect to their policy. So in regard to the first one, which is banning foreign buyers, we'll either see a ban, which is Labor policy, which is potentially Labor policy, or we'll see a partial ban, which is essentially saying, hey, you can buy a house in New Zealand, but it has to be a new dwelling.
Which is the way the Australians do it at the moment.
Yeah.
See, that's interesting, isn't it? Because National has been up to this point very resistant of a ban on foreign buyers, and we have seen that they don't have a register of foreign buyers up to this point or anything like that. So I would have thought that if that is a bottom line for Winston Peters, and I know there are about 300 of them, that is something that would probably align with Labor's policy more than National. Yeah,
although I suspect that National would probably be prepared to concede on that. I think a little bit of what was being talked about prior to the election about not being able to change free trade agreements, etc., some of that was about positioning, about putting themselves in a position where they could negotiate terms on things like that.
So if we reduce speculation from foreign buyers in the New Zealand market, what sort of impact is that likely to have on house prices?
Oh, virtually none. In fact, the Land Information New Zealand started putting some figures together just over a year ago to indicate what the impact of foreign buyers was on the market, and the figures at the moment show it's somewhere around 3 or 4%, not the 27 to 30% that was being quoted over a year ago.
But we don't know for sure, do we? Because we don't have a register.
We do have a register.
Right.
Yes, we do. And no, we don't know for sure, but even if those figures were wrong, they're going to be wrong by maybe a magnitude of 100%. That takes you to maybe 6 or 7%.
Right.
It's still not the massive impact on the market. But coming back to what I said before, it's about comfort to Peter's support base. So that kind of policy absolutely resonates with those people, which is why it's going to be important to them.
OK, let's talk immigration numbers. Clearly this is an issue very close to Winston Peters' heart.
Absolutely.
How's that likely to affect
I think there's an inevitability that there will be a drop in immigration numbers. The question is just how much. Labor have already indicated that they would cut those numbers quite dramatically.
Although Jacinda Ardern has kind of backed off that a little bit compared to Andrew Little.
Yeah, although again, I think you'll find some of that was posturing in negotiations because both parties will recognise that that's going to be a bottom line with Winston Peters, one of those 300 that you talked about. So I think you can see that we can expect that there's going to be a reduction. It's just a question of how much that reduction is likely to be.
No capital gains.
So for anybody who was worried about capital gains, that's pretty much off the table for the foreseeable future. There'll either be a moratorium or even basically a dropping of that policy. National doesn't support it. New Zealand First doesn't support it. It's very hard to see Labor getting that over the line.
And Labor says they're at least not going to support it until the next election.
That's right.
Who are the winners and losers, do you think?
So the winners are first home buyers. So there are some policies in the New Zealand First manifesto, which are very much around supporting first home buyers. Some of them are actually quite good too, although there's quite a big price tag on some of what they were proposing to do. Anybody who was worried about capital gains tax, as we've already mentioned, is a winner. The losers, I think, potentially, depending on what part of the suite of policies that New Zealand First promoted, potentially the economy's a loser, because there are some quite scary things in New Zealand's first policy, which if they were implemented in their full form would actually have the effect of slowing down, if not stalling, the economy. And this idea of urban development authorities, which will be dusted off because New Zealand First supports it, that has a pretty strong impact on private property rights. So there's some concerns there around what that might mean for private property holders if their housing commission idea is implemented under either National or Labour.
All right, Ashley, thanks for your time. As always, appreciate your insight. Ashley Church from the Property Institute.
And we wait
And we wait.
for Winston.